The thumb goes up, the brakes squeal, the dust settles, and the passenger door swings open. In the early 1990s, the Hume Highway was a vein of gold for the wandering spirit, a stretch of asphalt, promising adventure to any traveler with a pack and a map. It was a rite of passage. 7 young souls leaned into the wind, trusting the next stranger behind the wheel. They did not know the road had changed. They did not know the shoulder of the highway had become a threshold to a different kind of destination. The gesture that once meant freedom became their final act. One by one, the travelers vanished into the heat haze, leaving only silence where their laughter used to be. Families across oceans waited for letters, for phone calls, for any sign of life, but the mail stopped coming. Somewhere between the vast open plains and the dense, encroaching trees, the promise of the road died. The open highway, once a symbol of endless possibility, was transformed into a sprawling, hidden graveyard. The trap was set. The hunt had begun. Ivan Milat was a man who worked with his hands and moved with the rhythm of the road. As a laborer, he spent his days carving paths through the Australian landscape, operating heavy machinery that tore through the earth. He knew the layout of the land better than the surveyors. He knew the hidden logging tracks, the drainage ditches, and the thick, suffocating canopy of the Belanglo State Forest. While others saw a forest, Milat saw a sanctuary for secrets. He spent his off hours exploring the deepest, darkest pockets of the timber belt, far from the eyes of passing motorists. He marked the terrain, tested the ground for depth, and identified the hollows where the earth could be easily disturbed and then forgotten. He was not just clearing brush, he was preparing a site. Every shift on the road gave him a new perspective on the isolation of the bush. He understood where the light failed to reach the floor and where the sound of the highway vanished into the pines. The forest was no longer a place of nature to him. It was a workspace, a graveyard in waiting. He walked the perimeter of his chosen territory, gauging the distance from the asphalt to the pines, ensuring that no stray hiker would stumble upon his work. The trap was not just a road, it was the entire forest, and he had already claimed it. The disappearances began as isolated incidents, whispers lost in the vastness of the outback. In 1989, a young traveler from Britain failed to call home. Then, a student from Germany missed a planned flight. By 1990, the pattern tightened. 2 more vanished, then another. They were young, eager, and trusting, drifting across the continent with nothing but backpacks and open schedules. They stopped at roadhouses to buy water, checked maps at fuel stations, and stood by the asphalt with thumbs extended, waiting for a lift that would take them not to their next destination but into the void. Months turned into years. In distant cities, parents checked their mailboxes every morning. They stared at blank envelopes, waiting for news that never arrived. The silence grew heavier with every passing season. Phone lines stayed dead. No postcards reached home. No bank accounts showed activity. The world outside the forest remained oblivious, assuming the travelers had simply lost themselves in the freedom of the road. But in the Belanglo region, the earth was closing over their tracks. 7 lives, 7 distinct stories, all swallowed by the same shadow. The highway continued to hum with traffic, oblivious to the gaps left behind in the lives of those who never reached their journey's end. In September 1992, the silence of Belanglo broke. 2 orienteers moved off the beaten trail, pushing through dense brush in search of a checkpoint. One stumbled, losing footing on a patch of uneven, loose dirt. He looked down to steady himself and stopped. A piece of bone protruded from the forest floor, distinct, unmistakable, and human. The police arrived within hours, swarming the timber belt with flashlights and shovels. They began to peel back the layers of the earth. The first body appeared, then another. The scene was static, cold, and calculated. 7 individuals lay face down in the dirt, their wrists pulled tight behind their backs. The forest had become a repository for the missing. Officers marked the ground with yellow tape, their movements slow and deliberate under the canopy. The discovery shattered the quiet, confirming the worst fears of investigators. Each body was positioned with the same grim precision, bound in a way that spoke of absolute control. The scale of the horror was immediate and overwhelming. Task Force Air was formed before the last of the remains were even processed. The forest was no longer just a stretch of trees. It was a crime scene of unprecedented magnitude, and the search for the hand that had placed them there began in earnest. 300 officers combed the scrub, but the forest yielded no identity. They chased ghosts, mapping every tire track and questioning every local, yet the perpetrator remained invisible. The investigation hit a wall of silence. Then, the connection was made from 5,000 miles away. A man named Paul Onions, living in England, reached out to Australian authorities. He had seen the news reports, and the familiar geography of the forest ignited a memory he had tried to bury. Years earlier, Onions had been hitchhiking near Belanglo when a man known only as Bill pulled over. The ride had turned into a nightmare on a secluded track. Bill had pulled a weapon, forcing Onions to run for his life into the dense bush. He described the cold, methodical way the driver had approached the confrontation. Onions provided details of the vehicle and the specific, aggressive mannerisms of his attacker. His testimony was the first thread to pull on. Task Force Air stopped looking at the forest floor and started looking for the man Onions had escaped. The hunt shifted from the trees to a specific target, turning a cold trail into a focused, high-stakes pursuit of a man who thought his past was securely locked away. The photo lineup arrived in London via courier. Paul Onions sat in a quiet room, his hands steady as he laid the images out. He scanned the faces, each one a stranger, until he hit the third frame. He pointed. The man in the picture was the same one who had leveled a gun at him years before. The name was Ivan Milat. In Sydney, the news landed like a thunderclap. The ghost had a name, a face, and a history. Task Force Air mobilized instantly. They did not move to arrest him yet. They moved to watch. Surveillance teams fanned out across the city, establishing perimeters around every location Milat frequented. They tracked his movements, noting the rhythm of his daily life and the specific routes he took. Every move he made was now a calculated risk for the police. They knew he was a predator who understood how to vanish into the bush, and they could not afford to lose him in the shadows. The atmosphere in the command center tightened. The hunters were now within arm's reach of their quarry, but the danger was absolute. If Milat sensed the eyes on him, he would not hesitate to disappear into the forest again, taking his secrets with him. The operation became a silent, tense game of shadows. On the 22nd of May 1994, the perimeter closed in. Tactical teams moved in silence, surrounding the house before the first light broke. They breached the doors with heavy force, securing the rooms before any resistance could form. Ivan Milat was restrained. He offered no words as officers swept through the property, moving methodically from room to room. The search turned clinical. They pulled back wall panels and pried up floorboards, hunting for the tools of the trade. Behind a partition, they found it. A .22 caliber rifle, cold and heavy. Beside it, the inventory of a nightmare. They dragged out sleeping bags, trinkets, and personal objects that had belonged to the travelers who never returned. These were not mere belongings. They were trophies kept in the dark to remember the kills. The officers laid them out on the floor, a grim map of 7 stolen lives. Every item recovered was a nail in the coffin of his defense. The house had been a silent witness to years of violence, and now, the evidence spoke for itself. The hunter had finally been caught, and the physical weight of his crimes filled every corner of the room, leaving no doubt of the horror that had hidden in plain sight. The trial spanned 18 weeks of intense scrutiny. Ivan Milat sat in the dock, his presence a dark anchor in the courtroom. He did not remain silent. As the evidence mounted, he turned his gaze toward his own kin. He pointed fingers at his brothers, weaving a desperate narrative of betrayal and shifting the weight of the crimes onto them. He spoke with calculated precision, attempting to fracture the prosecution's case by sowing seeds of doubt among the jurors. The courtroom held its breath as he spun his web of lies, trying to leverage his family as a shield against the inevitable. But the evidence was absolute. The jury watched him, unmoved by his shifting stories. They saw the man who had turned the forest into a graveyard, not a victim of a conspiracy. When the verdict was finally read, the courtroom fell into a profound, heavy silence. The judge pronounced 7 consecutive life sentences. The gavel fell, echoing through the chamber. The legal battle ended, and the man who had preyed upon the innocent was officially stripped of his freedom. He stood motionless as the sentence took hold, finally trapped by the truth he had tried so hard to bury. Prison walls did not stifle the man. Behind the locked doors of the high-security wing, his defiance manifested in physical destruction. He viewed his own body as a final battlefield, launching grotesque protests against the system that held him. He swallowed razor blades, forcing emergency medical interventions that disrupted the facility. He took a knife to his own hand, severing a finger in a calculated act of self-mutilation that shocked guards and inmates alike. These were not cries for help, but acts of cold, sustained rejection of authority. He remained an enigma, a man who refused to yield even to the slow decay of incarceration. Year after year, investigators waited for a breakthrough, for a single word that might offer closure to the families left behind. That word never came. The silence he maintained in the courtroom followed him into the cell. In 2019, he died in custody. He took every detail of his crimes, every location of potential missing evidence, and every motive into the grave. He left behind a void where the truth should have been, ensuring that the final chapter of his life would be defined by the same absolute, chilling refusal to speak that had marked his entire existence. The death of the man did not scrub the stains from the highway. Instead, it solidified a permanent shift in how the country viewed the open road. The era of unchecked hitchhiking on the Hume Highway vanished, replaced by a deep-seated caution that lingers decades later. Travelers no longer look at the vast expanse of the bush with the same naive confidence. The landscape itself holds the memory of what occurred between the trees. In the Belanglo State Forest, the pines stand as silent witnesses. Where the ground once hid the truth, it now serves as a somber marker for those whose journeys were cut short. 7 lives were stolen, and their names remain etched in the public consciousness, a stark contrast to the man who sought to erase them. The forest remains quiet. The wind moves through the needles, a constant, low sound that fills the gaps where laughter and conversation once existed. While history documents the monster, the land preserves the names of the 7. They are not forgotten. The highway continues to stretch toward the horizon, but every mile traveled past those woods is marked by the heavy, enduring silence of a memorial that nature refuses to reclaim.